Hi, my name is Dr. Kenneth Pullman, and today you're going to find out about a diabetes breakthrough that I almost ended up in jail for discovering. You'll realize the shocking reason why everything you know about managing diabetes is dead wrong. Based on breakthrough new research conducted by myself and a small team of medical researchers, and that the $245 billion diabetes industry is fighting tooth and nail to keep hidden from you, you're about to see how a completely natural method, something that's been already medically proven to work in more than a dozen clinical trials, used successfully by 41,493 people and counting, that actually has nothing to do with insulin production whatsoever, can completely and permanently reverse both type 1 and type 2 diabetes in as little as a few weeks from today. Even if your blood sugar levels are off the charts, or if you've had the disease for decades, and whether you're 9 years old or 90 years old, this breakthrough of the century can eliminate the need for painful, scary insulin shots, side effect-filled oral medications, and the severe dietary restrictions that have turned eating food into a lifelong chore instead of something you enjoy. Incredibly, all it takes is a few simple things you can do right now from your home, things that cost nothing. Stay with me till the end of this video because I'll show you exactly what to do. And you can finally consume more of the delicious foods and drinks you're currently being told you have to avoid without consequences, and go from diabetic or pre-diabetic to 100% diabetes-free in less than a few weeks from right now. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how to use the method I'm talking about right inside this brief presentation, and I'll also give you the medical research that explains the reason this works. But before I do, let me go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Because you're probably wondering how any of this is possible, right? After all, you've probably always thought of your diabetes as a life sentence, something you can manage but never fully eliminate. You've probably always felt like the daily needles, or the nausea-inducing medications, or the dictatorial diets were essential. You may have even accepted that, as terrifying as it is, you're statistically likely to die 10 years earlier than a person who doesn't have diabetes, leaving your children or grandchildren to fend for themselves. And to look out into the audience at their high school or college graduation and see the empty chair where you should have been. So, if you're feeling skeptical or confused by what I'm saying right now, I completely understand. In fact, so were a lot of the 41,493 people who've already used the method I'm about to share with you, until they tried it for themselves. Devin from Twin Falls, Idaho writes, "Hearing that I could completely eliminate my diabetes in less than a couple of weeks flew in the face of everything I'd been told. I've been a diabetic for more than 8 years now, and the doctors have always said that this was a life sentence, something I could manage but never destroy. I can't believe the results. Within the first 2 weeks, my blood sugar reading had gone from an average of 330 to 120, and I was actually eating more carbs, starches, and finally enjoying my food. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. I think every single American suffering from type 2 diabetes needs to know about this." And Eric from Kansas City, Missouri says, "I've been diabetes-free for 3 months now, and it's all thanks to you. I still can't get over how simple following the plan you shared in your presentation was. The plan you shared was life-changing. I followed your protocol for 19 days, and my blood glucose levels haven't been over 130 in months. I have my life back, and it's all because of you." And Jason R. of Stillwater, Oklahoma, who says, "After watching your presentation and seeing the science you presented, I was mad. I couldn't believe I'd been lied to for so many years, when the secret to curing my diabetes had been sitting in front of me. But I will say this, the anger turned to pure joy as I started doing what you shared with me, and received the incredible news from my absolutely shocked doctor that there was no longer a single sign of my diabetes in my body. Who could be angry about that?" Now, given the extremeness of what I'm telling you, I'm sure you're going to want to know who I am and how I know all of this. Like I said, my name is Dr. Kenneth Pullman, and I'm with one of the nation's top medical research centers. In particular, for the last 20 years, I've spent every single moment of my professional career researching one single disease, diabetes. You see, for me, it's personal. In 1982, when I was 10 years old, I watched as surgeons cut through my father's lower leg, cleaving through the skin, the tissue, the muscle, and finally the bone. I wasn't supposed to see any of it, but my mother couldn't control me as I burst into the operating room and saw the man who was my childhood role model with tubes coming out of his skin and his foot dangling limply below the ankle. My father had been a type 2 diabetic since he was a child, and he'd ignored the swelling and numbness in his foot for years, when he should have been taking care of it. And because of that decision, it eventually got to the point where everything below his ankle was nothing but useless rotting flesh, which is why they took the saw to him. Now you may be thinking, this is extreme, and in many cases, it was. But even today, in 2014, diabetes remains the #1 cause of amputation both in the United States and around the world. And when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 1985 at the age of 13, the only thing I could think of was the stump where my father's leg had once been, and how I would do everything in my power to not end up like him. So from 7th grade on, my entire life became an obsession over finding a cure for diabetes. I received an undergraduate degree from Stanford where I studied biology and graduated with magna cum laude, an award reserved for top students. In medical school, I studied human disease and graduated in the top 10% of my class. And even on my weekends, when I should have been relaxing, I spent every waking hour researching the causes and potential cures of a devastating disease that affects more than 29 million type 2 diabetics and 79 million pre-diabetics in the United States. To anyone looking in on the outside, it would seem like my hard work was paying off. I published papers in the leading medical journals. I won awards and grants for my contributions in the field of human pathology. I got offered a position as a tenured med school professor at the age of 35, which is unheard of. But even though I appeared to be successful on the outside, inside, I was becoming incredibly frustrated. You see, all of the research money I was getting, all of the studies that my university would support, and even all of my papers that the medical journals would publish, were about finding ways to help diabetics manage their disease. At first, that might not sound like an issue. After all, that's what diabetic medication is for, right? Well, the answer is yes, and that's exactly what the problem was. You see, what I realized is that the entire medical profession, both from an academic and a corporate standpoint, was pumping billions of dollars into ways to keep diabetics like you and me on life support, because it's exactly what managing your diabetes is. It's constantly monitoring your blood sugar levels, taking oral medications or insulin shots, and following an incredibly restrictive diet that turns you into a lettuce-eating rabbit, with the ultimate goal of helping you survive another day. And the question that was keeping me up at night, and that I couldn't get out of my mind no matter how hard I tried, was this: why are we only focusing on managing diabetes instead of trying to find a cure? Something that allowed you to not just survive, but thrive, and that would permanently reduce your blood sugar back to normal, healthy levels without the use of medications or ridiculously harsh diets. So, I began digging deeper. I spoke with my academic colleagues. I started investigating the experimental diabetes medications that the pharmaceutical industry giants were currently working on. I began asking questions I wasn't supposed to ask. And when I finally put it all together and realized what had been in front of me all along throughout my entire academic career and all my research and all of my life's work, I felt like an idiot for not having realized it sooner. The pharmaceutical companies pump tens of billions of dollars a year into making sure your type 2 diabetes is never cured. They have absolutely zero interest in getting you off medications or insulin shots. And this is true even if you're not currently one of their customers and you're just following a strict eating plan right now. Because they know that eventually diabetes always wins. And whether it's tomorrow or 10 years from now, your body will begin breaking down and you'll come crawling over to them with open palms while they give you needles to push into your stomach or pills to stuff down your throat. Think about it. The average diabetic is worth more than $14,000 per year to the pharmaceutical companies. Diabetes medication is a $245 billion per year industry. That's billion with a B, $250 billion. And you can be damn sure that they would sooner have you die than give up that kind of money. It made my blood boil. I'd been so blind. It made me sick to think that I was partly responsible for their disgusting business practices, because I realized that Big Pharma controls everything that's being done in the field of diabetes research. That the major pharmaceuticals are actually the top contributors to academic diabetes research, and that because they have the cash, they're the ones making the rules. Which meant making sure that us little worker ants, with our fancy titles and prestigious medical degrees and hundreds of millions of dollars in research funding, never realized that all we were doing was spending our lives helping the corporations make massive profits, instead of helping real everyday people like you and me get better. That's why in October of 2011, I did something radical. Something that probably could have gotten me thrown behind bars, but that absolutely had to be done. I took the grant money that my research lab had just been awarded for a diabetes medication study and told my team that instead of performing more meaningless research that would do nothing but make the pharmaceutical giants several $1 billion in extra profits, we were going to use every single penny to look for a cure. It was thrilling, but terrifying. If Big Pharma discovered that we were using their own money to destroy them, they would come after us with every single penny they had. I could have ended up in jail for this. But all I could think about was the stump where my father's foot had once been, and how tired I was of having to take insulin shots for my diabetes and oral medications for my cholesterol and circulation, and of being an over-medicated slave to my disease. So we set out to work on a year-long journey, something that would eventually lead to the discovery of the natural and clinically proven method for permanently reversing even the worst cases of type 2 diabetes that I want to tell you about today. You see, historically, all diabetes research and medications have been focused on either stimulating insulin production in the pancreas or breaking down the sugars in your bloodstream. The reason for this is that the majority of the body's insulin is created in the pancreas. That insulin is what causes sugars to leave your bloodstream and be absorbed into your body. As a type 2 diabetic, you struggle with high blood sugar because either your body stopped producing that insulin or the blood sugar in your body has become resistant to the insulin you do produce. So the consensus in the academic and pharmaceutical world had always been that we needed to either help you produce more insulin or help your body break down blood sugar levels some other way. In a sense, this approach works. People with diabetes now live longer than ever before. It's possible to manage your blood sugar levels with mediocre success. And while those with diabetes used to die 20 years earlier than those without it, they now die only 10 years earlier on average. But on the other hand, this solution is still really no solution at all. Forcing your body to temporarily produce more insulin or to take pills that destroy glucose while also depleting other essential nutrients that are vital to your body keeps you on life support, but it doesn't address the cause of your type 2 diabetes at the root. So the question I posed to my research team was this: what's responsible for these high blood sugar levels in the first place? In other words, all of the focus has been on the fact that glucose levels are high and your insulin isn't working, so they stay high. But what everyone seemed to be ignoring was a really obvious fact that it's not insulin that's the problem. It's that you have such high blood sugar levels in the first place. Because what causes diabetes is that your body is producing an excessive amount of sugar in the bloodstream that just floats around in your blood. So instead of focusing on insulin, like every research lab in the country had been doing for more than 3 decades, my team decided to study how glucose, or blood sugar, is produced in the body in the first place, in order to determine if this blood sugar production could be slowed down or even stopped. At first, the research was slow, especially since we had to work in secret. But as we continued to extensively study the existing medical research about sugar production in the body, and as we spent millions of dollars performing our own experiments in the lab, we eventually came across an incredible discovery. Something that had the power to change the way people across the world looked at what diabetes is and how it can be treated. And that holds the key to reversing all traces of diabetes while naturally bringing your blood sugar levels down to non-diabetic levels within the next few weeks. You see, at the same time we were performing our research, a revolutionary new study was being published with the National Center for Biotechnology Information, and in it, several top scientists made a startling and a potentially game-changing claim. They had spent years studying how the human body works, and now had conclusive evidence that 80% of all sugar production in the body occurs in the tissues that are not affected by insulin. Instead, this excess glucose is produced in the kidneys and the liver, and in both cases, this production occurs regardless of what you're eating or what your overall health is. As soon as I read this, I knew that they were onto something. It just made too much sense. After all, think about it. Have you ever noticed how your blood sugar levels are higher in the morning than when you went to sleep the night before? If the answer is yes, have you ever stopped to wonder why this is? Because really, it doesn't make sense. You haven't eaten in 7 to 12 hours, so why should there be more sugar in your bloodstream? Well, the answer is that your liver and kidneys don't go to sleep when you do. Instead, they're constantly pumping out excess glucose on their own, completely independent of what your last meal was. Which is why no matter how much insulin you're stuffing yourself with, or how many pills you take, it's still a